Quick meeting agenda. We're going to go over the project. We're going to do a project overview. That's going to give you a sense of what we're looking at and what we're focusing on for this project. We'll talk a little bit about a design framework. So what are some of the design principles that we want to be thinking about when we're thinking about West Arden Arcade, and some ideas around streetscape design and mobility for all people. We'll have a quick touch point with you and handle any questions that are coming through the chat, and also offer you an opportunity to raise your hand and ask questions in the small group, or question answer, and then we'll jump into a small group activity. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into our project overview. The project Re-Envision West Arden Arcade is a 16-month planning process, which was funded through the Caltrans Sustainable Communities Grant Program. And they, as part of that, Sacramento County hired us, Tool Design, and Opticos to be their consultant. And the goal of this project is really to focus on the public realm. It's about creating a comfortable and connected public realm for all users, balancing multimodal operations through innovative design. And we'll talk more about what that means in our small groups. Promotes a culture of safety for all modes of transportation within the study area. And through that, provide opportunities, economic opportunities for local businesses, and address equity through providing a wide range of transportation options. That's really the focus. And a reminder that this is really the beginning of the process. And this is our project study area. If you haven't seen a map of it yet, wanted to provide this. And you can see the roads are in large print here. But the study area is bounded at the north by Cottage Way, at the south by Northrop Avenue, and on the west by Howe Avenue, and on the east by Watt Avenue, with a little bit of additional space to cover the school and the development property just to the east of Watt Avenue. So that's our project study focus area. And a reminder that we're just at the beginning of this process. We started late in June, really in earnest, with our first community advisory committee meeting. And this is just the beginning of the public process. So we are here at the first Charrette, and August 3rd through 6th, obviously. That's what we call a design workshop, is another word for that. And we are anticipating ongoing community engagement through the summer and fall and winter of 2020. We'll return and have another design charrette during October of this year, but you'll see other opportunities for engagement between this design workshop or charrette and the one in October. And then we'll be working through some design refinements and ultimately come up with a draft plan and a final plan that will, with the intent of guiding Complete Streets work in the West Arden Arcade area. I'm going to just pause for a second, check our chat, make sure no one's chatting directly to me. Wonderful. To give you a sense of what we're looking at for this week, which again is August 3rd through the 6th, we have multiple opportunities for people to get engaged. We're hosting, today we are here at our Monday, August 3rd opening presentation and discussion. We'll have another opportunity for people to come on in and see what we're working on in a virtual way to what we're calling the mid-charrette update, and that's tomorrow. And that will give you a sense of what we've been hearing so far. Today we've been meeting with the county. We've met with other stakeholders in what we call information sessions or stakeholder interviews. And we'll be hosting those as well Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. But on Tuesday, we will provide an update into what we're hearing. Again, on Wednesday, we'll be continuing to work on different ideas, concepts for the area in terms of Complete Streets redesigns and some areas that need to be addressed. And we'll share that at a longer virtual open house or virtual studio. And you'll be able to tune in then as well and have a good conversations with all the design staff. Will be available for any questions you have, and we'll run through some initial ideas. On Thursday, we'll wrap up that evening with a closing presentation of, again, just this first week of public engagement. And that will be from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And we'll do a closing presentation and end with a question and answer session, and then with a look toward what we'll be doing in September and also in October. I want to mention there's also a project website if you haven't been to it yet. This little link down at the bottom that says www.bit.ly/West Arden Arcade is the project website. And we welcome you to go to that location. All of the information for all of our meetings is posted there. You should be able to get to a link to the meeting if you are choosing to do that online or through your computer. And also there are phone numbers for each of the meetings as well. And so that's a little bit of an overview of the project flow. And what I'm going to dive into is a little bit about what we've seen in the corridor and what we've heard. We have also at this project website a project survey, and we really encourage you to take that. I'll mention that a little bit later. But when it comes to what we've seen, what I'm showing right now on the screen is just some photography from above our streets of West Arden Arcade, and just to ground us a little bit on the roads and the conditions in the project area. Rather large intersections, often definitely accommodate motor vehicles, feels very comfortable to drive, feels probably a little less comfortable to navigate as a pedestrian or as if you're cycling through the area. A little more challenging, a little more exposure to motor vehicles. These particular intersections that we're looking at are Arden Way and Howe and Arden Way at Watt. So those are the two intersections that we're looking at. And this slide shows three different types of difficult walking experiences. So from streets without sidewalks where people have to walk in the street near garbage receptacles on the photograph on the left, pretty challenging to navigate, especially as trash pickup is happening. To the middle image where someone is trying to navigate, showing, utility posts are sited within sidewalks. To the image on the far right where sidewalks in certain areas within the project's area and just adjacent to it just end, and it's not accommodating to people who want to walk here. And yet we know, in this slide, we've definitely experienced, I've been out there with county staff, I've been out there a couple times, and we know people want to walk or roll in the area and access key destinations throughout the community. These four photos illustrates the different types of people trying to navigate the streets, from a cyclist on the far left image who isn't really sure whether she should be on the street or sidewalk. We see that a lot in the study area. Or to someone who's crossing a busy intersection at Fulton and Arden Way and not sure he's going to make it to the other side before the pedestrian signal stops. And the second from the left image, to a good number of people navigating through mobility devices, as in the third from the left image shows. We saw a lot of people in mobility devices navigating the sidewalks and also places where there aren't necessarily sidewalks as well. A really challenging experience with high volumes and fast traffic. And to a young student looking to cross the street to a community destination in the far right image. And this really particularly incredibly and challenging for folks with any sort of sight impairments, as we see in this image. We had the opportunity to observe a gentleman who's looking to cross Arden Way, and there's a certain level of trust, I imagine, he has to have in the infrastructure that's provided, that the curb cuts are in the right place, that the pedestrian signal sound is placed correctly so he knows where to cross, that he's crossing in the right place and going to make it to his destination. And frankly, that motor vehicles will stop in the right places so that he is not hit. So really interesting to be out in the area and experience this. We spent a number of hours at different times of the day from 10 a.m. till 5 in the afternoon, watching and observing traffic and watching and observing pedestrians and cyclists. West Arden Arcade is really a destination within the area, and we know that. And I think that's what we're trying to design for, is not just people who want to, access things by motor vehicles, but the destinations in here are providing for other folks who are trying to navigate by bike or by foot or by rolling. So that's who we need to design for. So So that's what we've seen, and now I want to move on to what we've heard. We have an online survey, and it's a map-based survey, and I've posted the link here as well. This is also available on the project website. This went live on June 24th, which was only 10 days ago, and it'll be up for through September. And we've had 42 responses so far, and I have to say that's really great for the first 10 days of a survey. From our experiences doing this in communities like yours all across the country. We have it up in 6 different languages as well, so trying to encourage as many people who live, work, and play in the area to take the survey. So encourage you to do so, and please tell your friends. We asked the question at the beginning. There's a couple of vision questions at the beginning. We'll ask you something similar to this evening, but list 3 words that you would describe use to describe West Arden Arcade today. And here's just a smattering of what we're hearing. Lots of different words. Again, we've asked people to really winnow it down to just a word or 2, and we hear things about it feels like there's a lot of traffic. It's a commercial area. There's, it doesn't feel very healthy. It's pedestrian unfriendly. It feels like there's a lot of potential for it to change. It's declining, but there's also the sense of nostalgia and what it was. And so there's some really, this is just a nice way to tease out how people feel about it right now. And then we asked the same question about what they would like to use, what 3 words they would use to describe your vision for the future of West Arden Arcade. And I love that vibrant comes up to the top, and diverse and safe, clean and walkable, friendly and healthy. I think these are all things that we can talk a little bit more about in the next the small group discussion, but something we hear from a lot of communities who are trying to really address their public realm and make it more comfortable for everyone who want to be there. And we asked the question, what would you like to see more of in West Arden Arcade? And here's just a couple of things that came to mind. Develop an identity for West Arden Arcade was pretty high at the top. Spaces to hold community events, public art. Just a quick pie chart. Again, this isn't statistically valid at this point, and it's just a quick snapshot. Again, we're just 10 days into the survey, so there's no necessarily percentages that we're incorporating it around here, but gives you, pie chart is an easy way to represent what people are looking for. Housing, people mentioned, parks and recreational spaces, safety for people walking or biking. A large part of people want to see that or responded that was at the top. And street trees and other landscaping, again, really a large part of the slice that they've mentioned. So again, just a snapshot of what we've heard. We know we're going to hear a lot more, certainly through this week and beyond, as we continue to engage with the public and stakeholders in this meeting. So we're going to jump into what we want to do this evening, which is what could be for your community. And that is really what we want to hear from you. But before we do, we want to tee it up with a few ideas to consider. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ian Lockwood, who's a livable transportation engineer who I've had the opportunity to work with on lots of projects across the country. And he has some great ways about to tee up a conversation as we jump into the small group, some things for you to consider and some ideas before we jump into that conversation. So Ian, I'll continue to run the show, but just tell me when to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Hello, everybody. And if you could put your phones on mute so there's no echo, that'd be great. Cindy talked about making a comfortable and connected public realm, and what that really means for West Arden Arcade is the streets. Your place is really defined strongly by your arterial streets like Burley Way and Fulton Avenue and Watt Avenue and so on. So we're going to talk about making a great place through the lens of the street. So here's a before and after. On the left is the before, where there's a straight, hot 4-lane commuter route, and we softened it. We put in lateral shifts on the right-hand side with a little linear park with trees and pedestrian scale lighting. And right away, people started walking, biking, property values increased, natural surveillance went up, and crime rates went down. So it was a huge success. Next. There may be a little delay in the slides once in a while. This is another before and after. On the left is, this is in Sulphur Springs, Texas, is a picture of the before. So there's the old state road going through the center of town, and that was the main street, and it looks like a dilapidated backdrop for an old Western movie. And on the right is the after picture with a really beautiful street with trees. Now that was when this project was built. Now it's 10 years later. Those trees are nice and there's a lot of shade. And that street went from completely vacant to full and vibrant. Businesses moved in and invested in the properties. Next. So this is Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is a highway that was built along the waterfront, and it goes right downtown, and you can see the aquarium on the left-hand side. So you got the river on the right, the highway, and then the aquarium and the rest of the downtown, and it blocked the city off from the waterfront. And the city wanted to have a nice downtown and a nice place, but didn't have access to its amenities. So we wanted to make it walkable, and we had a big fight with the Tennessee DOT over the future of that road, and they said that the big road was super important for people to get to work and to get to jobs and whatnot. We ended up removing it and putting in a 2-lane city street with a wonderful accessible waterfront, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment followed this project into downtown because it had its fundamentals right. It was walkable. And so more jobs, more investment, more people, and just a better place. And they never missed the highway once it was gone either. Next. So this is a place called Winter Garden, Florida. It too is quite hot, and they had this trail going down the middle of their main street, and it was hot. Nobody used it. 80% vacancies along the stores on the sides, and so we redesigned it to be comfortable, and we planted a lot of street trees. You can see in the right-hand image along the trail. We changed the trail as well, and ended up with a completely occupied main street. So that's the inspiration. So I showed you 4 completely different contexts on how to use streets to create a great place. And so you've got a variety of contexts in your community, and what we'd like to do is work with you on your public realm to improve the place according to your vision. So here's some ways of going about it. One thing about great places is to consider people's experiences. All the different folks that use the streets, whether they're on foot, in a wheelchair, on a bus, walking, driving, riding their bikes. Next. And then to apply good design principles. Great places don't happen by accident. They happen through design. And so we'll be showing you a whole bunch of principles, and you'll be showing us your values so we can apply the principles according to your values. Priorities is important. We can't change the whole place at once, so we have to work with folks to figure out what's the most important, what's middle importance, and what's the low importance, and work accordingly. And probably the most important thing, especially at this stage in the project, is to understand what people are feeling, what they're thinking, what they want to preserve, what they want to fix, what they want to create, their culture and history, their values. So we're going to try and capture that during this portion. And the last thing is the process. And we have a process that we like to follow that has been very successful, as Cindy mentioned, in projects all across the country. So next. So we're going to look at some design principles, but we're going to look at them all through the pedestrian perspective. And so this is the kind of thing we want to keep in mind, the experiences of pedestrians, cyclists, and so on. So this is the process, and the level of effort is on the left and time is on the right. And so right now we're in discovery. So you want to learn all about what your values are and what you think should happen. Then we're going to start with some starter ideas and do some drawings and have discussions about those, what we call feedback loops, to make sure that we're on the right track with you and your neighbors. And then towards the end, we document the whole process so that we can memorialize it in a plan so that it can get implemented. So here are some of the discovery meetings. We have group meetings, we have pinups, we have plenary sessions like this one on the bottom right. You can see a whole bunch of people meeting, but we'll be doing it virtually. So here's some virtual meetings. We'll have little work groups together today, and we'll have some plenary meetings all together on the computer. So we can duplicate what we do in person virtually. And regarding values, we have 4 questions we like to ask. And the first one is just about your values. And you know, they vary from community to community. In this particular, I just borrowed one from a past project. Respect for the area was important. Family values was important. Cyclists, social cohesion, all these were important. And then we asked what people like that they would like to see preserved. In this particular community, they had a historic fountain they liked. The parks, the museum, the buildings. So that's what they wanted to preserve. What they didn't like were things like the hot, what they'd like to change was things like the hot street. If you can, yeah, there we go. The vacant buildings, some of the darkness in parts of the city, empty buildings. And lastly, what's missing that they would like to create. And where we hear in hotter climates, trees and shade are absolutely vital for walkability and cycling and place and image, food, calming the speeding traffic and this kind of thing. So this is what they wanted to be created. And next is, this all adds up to what we call a vision. When we put all that together, it's a kind of a consensus on where the place, where West Arden Arcade, what it ought to be like in the future. It gives us a good litmus test to test our ideas with. And then the people's experiences are really very important. So there are all kinds of different, what we call users of the public realm. The easy ones to accommodate are the motorists and the buses. And the more difficult ones to accommodate comfortably are the pedestrians, the transit users getting to the bus stops, the kids, elderly folks, the folks that have disabilities, and the cyclists. These are the mobile users of the street. And then we want to be able to support the static users, the schools, the homes, the neighborhoods, the businesses, and the recreational area, the vulnerable users. And pedestrians are absolutely key to this. They're the canary of the mine of the city. And like Cindy emphasized, it's the vulnerable users. My father used a wheelchair and my uncle was blinded in a war, and their needs were not met where they lived. And I was always saddened by it growing up. And so it's very personal to me, and we really want to design the streets to accommodate people with various disabilities, and children, other people with who are vulnerable. Next. So that's kind of the how to make a great place using streets. And I'm going to look at the principles through the lens of walkability. So all walkable environments have three attributes that are important, whether it's a beach or a downtown or whatever. There's three things that link all walkable areas together. The first one is comfort. Are people at ease with their environment and they're comfortable? And in West Arden Arcade, you're not comfortable. They're speeding. The sidewalks and bike facilities are inadequate. It's hot, so that's not being met right now. Is it accessible? Not just ADA, but in every kind of way, visually accessible and physically accessible. And then engaging. Does the public realm, do the streets hold your interest so you're walking further? And it's not really working that well because you've got lots of surface parking lots making it not very engaging. And so these three attributes pertain to beaches, walks through the forest, or in urban environments. So this happens to be a nice walk down a urban waterfront. Next. And there's a nice walk along a little main street. Next. So then when you get into cities, you need more than just those three attributes. So the first one is you need it to be connected. And this talks to the street network. And here's a couple of examples where there's a disconnected place, and then below is a connected place. You can see that by the richness of the parallel network. So you can actually walk to and from places directly. And then the fifth thing is convenient. If you just click the next slides, are the things you want to get to close at hand? So from your house, can you get some food? Can you recreate? Can you get to a park? Can you get to school? And these sorts of things. And that's super important for walkability. And then for places with high turnover of people, tourist areas, the next category of things, universities, places, shopping areas, it needs to be legible. And what we mean by legible are there landmarks, for example. And then also, does the street network lend itself to people being able to make kind of like a cognitive map of where they are? Where's the waterfront? Where's the downtown? Where's the main shopping area? Where's my home? so they can navigate the place successfully. And then lastly, and ideally, the place is safe and equitable. So equitable means that it accommodates all income levels, all ability levels, all modes equitably. So we have to give the folks who are vulnerable a higher lift up than those who are strong. And the last one is safe. And safe is a statistical thing with best practices on lowering the number of deaths, injuries, crashes, and so forth. And I just want to highlight the difference between safe and comfortable. So you go to the next slide. And so comfortable is the feeling of safety, and safe is statistically safe. So the image on the bottom compared to the top, on the top, there's an image of a very hostile 4-lane one-way street with posts in the middle of the sidewalk that people bump into. On the bottom, there's a much slower street with separated bike facilities where cyclists can ride comfortably, and a completely unimpeded sidewalk so people can navigate it comfortably regardless of what ability level. And in the background on the bottom, you can see reinvestment. This particular city was suffering from disinvestment for probably about 20 years. And this public realm project was the catalyst to create, in fact, $100 million of private investment before the ribbon was cut on this particular project. Next. So that's the idea of how to make a great place. Next. So I want to talk a little bit about mobility. When I started my career 30-odd years ago, mobility was the movement of people and goods. And we never questioned why people were driving or moving. And we just assumed that faster, farther, and in greater numbers was progress. And we've learned since then that that's not true. Mobility is the population's, S apostrophe, the population's capabilities and strategies to move in order to access what we need to live. And populations means people with disabilities, people with different income levels, young, elderly, millennials, all these different user groups all have their own mobility needs. Next. And they move in order to access what they need to live. And that means movement is purposeful. And so on the bottom right, you see all the different things we travel for, to go to church, to recreate, to go to the doctor, shop. And only 20% of our trips have to do with going to work. 80% have to do with other things. So if we can mix our land uses closer together, we can shorten trips and increase people's mobility. And so I drew this cartoon to illustrate the idea of mixed use. Hello, mixed land use and density reduces my average weekend trip length by about 85%. And there's a guy sitting on the couch with everything he needs around him, a fridge, his console, and for fun, I drew a toilet in the couch. And anyway, his wife's not too happy with it in the cartoon. But the idea is that by bringing land use together, we can increase people's mobility. I just want to talk about arterials for a moment because your community is defined a lot by its arterials. And in theory, local streets are about access and arterials are about throughput. And that theory was floated by the modernists about specializing arterials for throughput. And let's just take a look at, see if this theory is correct. This is an aerial of Buffalo, and in it, we're high up, we're about 30,000 feet up, and you can see the neighborhoods, which are a little darker, but you can see the arterial roads going through the arterial, and they're lighter, and that's because that's where all the grocery stores, the food, the jobs, the entertainment areas are located along the arterials. A huge portion of Buffalo's economy is on arterials. There's exceptions like, for example, like downtowns and so on. And the same pattern, this is an area in Orlando. You can see where the neighborhoods are with the local streets, and you can see the arterials because that's, again, where all the economy and socializing and stuff are happening in Orlando. And that's a role of the arterial. This is Salt Lake City, same pattern. The arterials are hugely important for access for jobs, food, entertainment, and so on. And we can show every city in the country like that. And here's West Arden Arcade. And you can see, if you just look down Arden Way or Fulton or Howe, that's where the jobs are, that's where the food is and that kind of thing. So arterials are hugely important for access, just not throughput. So next. And so is this even true? And it's not. It's not true today. It's never been true. If you look historically at some of America's greatest arterials, this is in Richmond, Virginia. It's Broad Street. It's their biggest arterial. And look at all the social and economic exchange happening on this arterial. This is where the grocery stores are. This is where the department stores are. This is where the theaters are. So people would take transit, drive, walk, bike, and experience this wonderful place of social and economic exchange. So arterials, truthfully, have a huge access role, and they have a throughput role as well, more so than a local street. But modernists will tell you that arterials are for throughput as an excuse to deny access to businesses and speed them up. So here's Richmond a long time ago, and you can see the Broad Street, which is the dark line down the middle is thick because it's we've added up all of the trolley lines, and you can see the trolley lines going all around the city. And next to the trolley lines are those white bars, which are a 3-minute walk. And so the whole city is pretty well white, which means it's like a whole transit-oriented development until 1949, when they decided to get rid of all of the transit infrastructure, all of the trolley lines. And so on the left, you see the beautiful arterial street with all the social and economic exchange, all the pedestrians on the side. And on the right, you see what it looks like today. Absolutely barren sidewalks, and it's just a thoroughfare for motorists. And this pattern happened in city after city after city across the country. So think about this graph about how arterials are very access oriented and throughput, and they've been completely made out of balance with modern interventions. And so when you think about the definition of mobility, population's capabilities and strategy to move in order to access what they need, which version of Broad Street in Richmond provided more mobility? The one from a long time ago with all the social and economic exchange, or the new one where it's just really a car conduit? And clearly, there's actually more mobility in the older image. So what should we do with the arterials in your community? Should we keep the sort of auto-centric version or change it? And a good precedent might be up in Maryland, just north of DC, on the Rockville Pike. And so at the top is the before picture, and the bottom is what we want to turn into. High profile project, this one. And this image shows part of the Rockville Pike. It's an aerial oblique picture, and you can see the mall in the foreground and all of these surface parking lot developments all over. It was all built in the 50s and 60s, and you can see the neighborhoods in the bottom. And what happened here was the neighborhoods didn't want any more changes to happen to the developed area because they feared more traffic. So they stopped any density or infill. And this is what it looks like on the ground, very hostile for people. Notice the sidewalks right against the travelway, very uncomfortable. This is what it looks like when you're driving down it. It's like nowhere USA. This could be anywhere. And this is the view from the side, sorry, this is the pedestrian trying to cross the street. The crossings are so far apart that it's just really difficult to cross. And you'll see a few different people trying to cross these hostile arterials. And if you are using a wheelchair like this fellow, it's really, really difficult to cross. You know, the sidewalks are broken up and it's long distances to cross the streets. Next. So in this view, you'll see some colored images colored buildings. Those are our clients in this aerial, and everything gray were our non-clients. So the private sector actually hired us to help the county replan this area. The first thing we did was an X-ray. So we drew on top of this aerial all of the existing streets, and we looked at for problems with the network to get the increased connectivity. That's the slide on the left. On the slide on the right, those are all our corrections for the network, which we worked with all the property owners to implement. And then we drew on the 5 and 10-minute walk contours. This is the base of that is actually the model, which shows that with the more connected network, the traffic volumes are shared more equitably on all the streets, so all the streets can be made more walkable. So you can see on the right, the area captured within a 5-minute walk is much greater than on the left, where it's a very small area, and same with the 10-minute walk area on the right. Next. So when we combine all those ideas together, we can create a beautiful arterial with transit down the middle, 18-foot wide sidewalks, which are comfortable for all user groups, separated bike facilities, very legible crossings. And what was the worst address in town would become the best address. And interestingly, the neighborhoods around this area fought us tooth and nail at the beginning because they feared more density would bring more traffic. But they learned that a lot of those folks are getting older. They're not going to be able to drive. They want to find services and housing options nearby so they can stay in their own community. And they didn't have those housing options. So with this increase in density, they'll have the housing options. And this is one of the developers' imaginations of the area. And we ended up with complete support from the neighborhoods. Now it's getting built with support from the business community, the property owners, and the neighborhoods. As coming out of the ground, the new networks going in, and all this density is going in. Not a single street is getting widened because we're adding new network. And the last example I just want to show you is South Bend. And South Bend was a very nice city after World War II. Great intact fabric, and then they sped up their roads. They made them one way. They did all the sort of modern ideas to keep cars moving fast with high levels of service. And they tore down about half their buildings to make room for surface parking lots. And so the car became the common denominator in the city as opposed to the pedestrian. And so we met with a lot of people during the effort. And the key is you gotta meet with everybody. You can't exclude people. Even people you think may detract from what you want to do, you need to meet everybody. Because at the end of the day, you want an informed consensus on what ought to happen in your community. And if you don't include people, you're going to end up with controversy at the end, and we don't want that. So we asked everybody in South Bend what their values were, what they like and want to preserve, what they dislike and want to change, and what's missing they would like to create for the whole area. And then later on we zoomed in, but for now, this is what at the beginning, that's what we did, and that's what we want to do for now in West Arden Arcade. So in South Bend, there was a couple things like a couple of difficult intersections and a bunch of one-way streets that were very problematic, which we learned about. And so what we did is we drew the answer. Oh, by the way, this was the hospital area at the north, the redevelopment site, and the main streets were terrible. So we drew a plan which linked the whole thing together. Then we zoomed in and did some vignettes of the hospital. And I'll just quickly flash through those. The hospital's to the north. So the before picture of the hospital was fraught with problems. We worked with the hospital and we drew a plan that aligned with the city's values and what they want to do and the hospitals. And so there's the plan, and next shows it implemented. And so it happened. And the reason it got implemented because we included everybody. And then the development site, same thing. We worked with everybody again. This is the before picture. The next slide is the plan. And then the last slide is it's implemented. And so the whole thing got implemented very quickly, and then with a lot of support. And this is the waterfront road in the main street. I'll just show you the waterfront road. So this is, oh, sorry, I'll show you the main street. This is the main street. And it's a 4-lane, one-way car conduit, and hostile to everybody, like one restaurant open on it. And this is afterwards. And so now it's went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, 2-way, street trees, separated bike facilities, nice walking facilities, and lo and behold, a lot of investment. This is the waterfront road going the other way. 4-lane hostile road, very difficult to navigate on foot. And the after pictures, that 2-lane road I showed you earlier with the investment happening on the side with the separated bike facilities and walking. So the key is to understand the values at this stage and answer those questions. So we really need to talk about how to do those tabletop exercises virtually. And so that's what I'll talk about next, because that's really important. That will inform everything after this. So we're going to break into small groups. And this is what we would do in real life if we didn't have a pandemic going on. We would meet around a table, and you can see Cindy there. She has a map with a piece of trace paper on top of it. And she would draw what people say. She would circle things and make notes. And we're going to show you a way we're going to do that virtually in a moment. And then those 4 questions, we used to answer those on big pieces of Post-it notes in the group. And so we're going to do that virtually as well. And we're going to have virtual Post-it notes. And so I'll show you what it looks like. So these are the questions. We've gone through them already. The values, what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to change. And so this is what the virtual tabletop meeting looks like. We have a map in the middle. It's surrounded by Post-it notes, which we can make marks on the map itself. And then those 4 sort of large lists we do, what you like, what you don't like, what's missing, and what you want to, or your values, are around the edges. And so we can make nice lists with everybody in our group room. So that's kind of like a blank canvas. And this is one that's filled in. Now I just made this up. This has nothing to do with your neighborhood, but I just made it up. So people like the parks, they don't like the fast driving, they don't like the sidewalks next to traffic. What's missing is shade and street trees, that they like to create safe crossings. And on the left, their values, it's family friendly, it's walkable, it's attractive, and it's quiet. So we'll just fill it in something like that. And then when you zoom in, I just zoomed in on the map, and on the post-it notes, we just can mark sort of geographically that, for example, Bell Street is too fast in front of the schools. The expressway is out of scale, that comes from the west. People like a particular park and they like to preserve it. On Arden Way Expressway, there's no natural surveillance, so there's issues on the sides. There's a property on the right-hand side of the study area which has a wall between, which denies cross access. So these are things that theoretically people pointed out, and that's what we'll do in our group meeting. So that's what you'll see in a few moments when we get into our group chats.
Great, thanks, Ian. And so as he mentioned, we're going to jump into a small group activity in just a minute. But what I want to do before we do that is pause and look at some of this chat that we've heard. Looks like people have been chiming in here, and I just want to read some of those comments, and I'll take it from the top, so bear with me. Hopefully I'm not echoing. But I heard some people chime in on some of the presentations that they are excited that those would be great improvements. One of the questions comes up, and I'll tee it up to Ian to respond to this, is, how do you also address gentrification as property values go up? You showed some great examples, and I know that's a concern around communities that we've worked with. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, we could spend the whole meeting on that, but in a nutshell, we have helped many cities increase their image and their value and their quality of life. And we should never apologize for making our places better and more beautiful. What we need to do in parallel is to put in land use measures to prevent gentrification and displacement. We need to make a pact that this area needs to keep its affordability and perhaps even attract all different income levels into it for equity. But we can increase, like in West Palm Beach, for example, where I used to head the transportation department. We increased the value of that area, and we didn't displace people. We protected the smaller houses with things like form-based code. We helped people become homeowners. We did a whole variety of things to keep our low-income folks and medium-income folks in place. And then for all the new buildings, we ensured that there was an equitable distribution of affordability to when people moved in. There was a variety of housing types built into the same developments. And you couldn't tell by the door on it, but the units were smaller with a different set of finishes. And anyway, that's just a tip of the iceberg on the sort of the land use components that need to happen in parallel to keep the place equitable.
Thanks, Ian. Some other folks and mentioned just what you talked about, the mixed use, the importance of that to address this concern around gentrification. A couple of the questions I just want to read out for those who are on the phone who can't see the chat, and we've had some other folks of the design team respond to these, so I'm not going to dwell too much or take too much of our time on that. But one of the questions was, will the project consider zoning land uses and things like reducing the number of licenses to sell various things? And the answer is, and this is exactly our charge, we will be looking at land use and how to enable some mixed use corridors. Again, really our focus is on the public realm, but that does influence, of course, land use. Some of the finer details, such as licensing, are really outside of the scope, but there will be enough information we anticipate through this process to really guide the county and making decisions on this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, mention we're going to go into a small group activity here, and that's going to take a little bit of, right now you've received probably a notification that you're about to go into a small group, a breakout room. So please go ahead into that small group room, and we'll convene in 45 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a good conversation. Looks like we have a lot of people still on the line. So thank you for hanging with us, and look forward to hearing a little bit about how the conversations go. We're not going to ask folks to raise their hand unless you want to. You're welcome to. Just raise your hand for us, and or send a chat if you want to mention something. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll go back to our presentation. And so now it's our time to, whoops, I'm not going to do the presentation because I'm going to go to Mentimeter. But we're going to share our thoughts really quickly. I'd love to hear back on how the conversation went. So I'm going to go to the next question, which is it's a repeat of what you said in your small group activity or you talked about. So if you're still at Mentimeter or menti.com, type in the code 48162 if you haven't already. And we're asking for what are your overarching community values. Just report back maybe one or two ideas that you shared with your group. And we'd love to see what folks are seeing. We heard a lot from our great coming in now. Heard a lot in my group about the importance of safety, which is so traffic is a part of that. Friendly and an appreciation of art. Love it. The idea of family and community came up quite a bit. The diversity and embracing that and really celebrating that. Parks and trees and shade. We heard a lot about shade in our group. Family friendly. Really important aspects of your values that can help drive the design process. Wonderful. Mix of uses. Lovely. Local, vibrant place. Keep affordable housing, add green belt along Strong Ranch and Slough and trees. Make streets safer for all modes. Great. Lots of great comments here. We're going to be recording this again, and so we'll have these from the Mentimeter report out, also from the small group activity, and then of course the survey that we're asking. So I'm going to ask the next question, which is what did you mention when you got the question? What did you like and want to see preserved? What of your community would you like to see preserved? That it's affordable. The interesting architecture, definitely saw that in different pockets of the community. I heard from our group some about the importance of celebrating the diversity, like you mentioned, and some people mentioned the first slide, and that needs to be retained. The diversity, yes, exactly. Established landscape and trees, identifiable neighborhoods. We heard that in some comments before today about the importance of West Arden Arcade really having its own character, its sense of identity. Businesses, making sure that the local family-owned businesses are able to stay and be preserved. Wonderful. All right, I'm going to head to the next question. And you can keep chiming in on that question if you want. But what do you like, what do you dislike and want to see changed? So a lack of access for all modes. We talked a little bit about that in the presentation, and definitely what we saw out on the streets as a design team, not very pedestrian friendly. Want to see the blight or the closed, we talked about the closed retail or the empty retail spaces and how we think about those and opportunities, speeding, seeing that change. that the commercial diversifies. It's all the same. It feels like all the same. Remove the overhead utility poles. I think that would be a long-term goal. That would be great for the experience and the opportunities that you could do. The gritty feel to the major arterials and traffic. So all things we've seen out there, we've talked about. Hopefully you had a really rich conversation in your small group activity. Thanks to everyone who participated and was a part of that. We had a really good conversation there. So I'm gonna return to let's see, one more, actually I'm gonna go back real quick and just make sure. Yeah, what is missing that you would like to see created? This is an important one. More walkable. Interesting idea, Greenbelt connecting the parks. They've got some great parks within the community and just adjacent. So how we can stitch those together so you intuitively or legibly know how to get from one to the other if you wanted to. Destinations, small public spaces, love that idea. Shade trees and overall sense of place would be fantastic. Bike lanes and more parks and trees, bus lines. We talked about transit in our group as well, and the service around that from this area to downtown. Safe speeds, maintenance and fixing things quickly. A splash park, always great for families. Well aligned with the family values. Wonderful. This is great. These are all great comments. You can keep them coming in. I think you can go back and forth to the questions, and this will remain open for a little while, a couple days, but you also have other opportunities again to engage. I'm going to go back to our presentation. Thank you for your great comments there. I'm going to actually look quickly at any of the chat. Nothing in the chat. Whoops, excuse me. And I need to switch. So again, just a reminder of our session or our week this week. We are here, which is that opening night presentation on Monday, August 3rd, just about to wrap up. We are going to be working as a design team all together, except separately in a virtual space throughout all of tomorrow. We also have a series of listening sessions or stakeholder interviews throughout the day with a variety of groups on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we'll come back together in a public forum from 4 to 5 p.m. Give you a little intro into what we've been working on and what we've heard through some of those stakeholder conversations, and another opportunity for public input then. And then Wednesday, there's a larger opportunity at the Open Studio. Again, share and brainstorm there on our starter ideas. And then Thursday, we'll wrap up this week, the first week of the engagement aspect of this project, from 5 to 6:30 p.m. with closing presentation and a discussion, again, opportunity to weigh in on what you're seeing and what we're working on. So I want to really encourage you to be as involved as you possibly can. Go grab your neighbors, bring them down. Meaning tune into the Zoom in the comfort of your own home or wherever you happen to be. Love to see more of you throughout the week. And again, come join us for any of these and all of these sessions. There is a project website that is up, and you can see the URL at the bottom here, www.bit.ly/West Arden Arcade, and a lot of good details there as well. So with that, I am going to end us a couple of minutes early, it looks like, and say thank you so much. If you have any questions, we are, again, available. All of our contact information, Christy Graybo's contact information is available at the project website. Looks like there's a chat real quick. And someone saying thank you. So thanks to you for being here as well. And we are available for you this week, of course, and moving forward. So looking forward to connecting with you as this project progresses.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, feel free to unmute if you'd like.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great stuff, room 2.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation tonight and the opportunity to provide input.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your input. Oops.
It looks like Stuart asked a question in the chat, but I can't tell if he's still on the call.
Oh, I didn't see that. Christy, stay here. Oh, there we go. No, I don't see. Oh yeah, Stuart. What is the end goal here? What will the county be doing with this responding data collected this week? And thank you from Stuart. That's a great question. We can answer that. The end goal for this is to really hear from what we would call local experts, and that's you, people from the community, and those who know the community better than we do. And the idea is we work together as we come up with design solutions that make most sense for your community together. And in terms of the data and the information, we'll be synthesizing that. Those helped us to really what we call define design directives, and we'll be keeping those front and center in our minds as we come up with different design solutions. Or when I say design solution, that's everything from an example or an idea around a cross section and how could we repurpose or think about some of the right of way that is allocated to pedestrians or bicyclists. So we will be synthesizing the data as a short answer to that to help direct our design team. Everyone from the design team should stay on. For those, it looks like Susan and Crystal Harding, you're still with us. Is there any questions that we can answer for you at this time? Great, Crystal. Crystal said she'll log on tomorrow. We look forward to it. Thank you for being here. And we have Susan. I think and her husband were in my small group activity. Any additional comments or thoughts that you wanted to share or questions? Okay, Sarah, please do. Thank you. Yeah, county team, stay on. Can?
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. Matali is asking if she should, let me just coordinate something. If you want to, sorry, I'm just trying to get Matali back on the call. So how did the small group conversations go?
Do you want to stop recording or keep recording?